Hi, my name is Sean. I'm the Strategic Solutions Specialist at A Insights. And today we're going to be diving a little bit deeper into the scenarios coming out of the Middle East with the US-Iran conflict. But before we begin, what I really want to point out to you is that war is just a failure of intelligence. And throughout this, I'm not going to be trying to reduce it. I'm not going to be trying to turn a blind eye to what's happening, but really focusing on the business issues that arise from this and how they affect your supply chains, how they affect your consumers, and the world around them. So let's dive in and let's see what is the context of the current situation. So we don't just currently have market volatility. There's also a lot of tariff uncertainty, growing regulatory complexity, and none of us are understanding politicians anymore. This is just the baseline. Welcome to 2026, where we have the rise of China and India. We have division between US, BRICS, and what's left of NATO. We also have residual inflation from the pandemic, residual inflation from the Russia-Ukraine geopolitical situation. And then we also have free trade agreements all over the world. So really and truly, this US-Iran geopolitical conflict is coming on top. And it's almost like the straw that breaks the camel's back. Or in a more business-like sense, it's a tipping point that very clear indication that things are going to change. So as a agri-food market intelligence company, guns and bombs are not in our scope. So instead of talking about these things, let's talk instead about the impact on energy, what this means for the food industry, what this means for trade, and what kind of macro indicators are attached to this. Now, for all of these big, scary things, you need to ask the question, can you outrun the rhino in 2026? And this is not the best question. The real question is, which other tourists do I need to outrun to be successful? So it's reframing the situation, saying the big scary crisis is not the issue. This is a competitive issue where all I need to do is outperform or out anticipate my competition on what happens next and make decisions that affect the outcome of this. But sometimes you don't have the time or the resources to focus on the big crisis. And this is where we can step in and offer you some running shoes that put you ahead of your competition. Now, what does this look like? What does an advantage like this look like? Well, at a time like this, you're going to want to have a war room in place. So you're going to be wanting a space to be able to make decisions where you are constantly informed with up to date information as to what's happening around you. That this is how bad the situation's got, that a solution like this needs to be in place. But now the question is, what are you going to put on those boards? And we have some solutions for you. So let's start off with scenarios and ask ourselves what are the key questions that we need to address in these scenarios? Well, first of all, how long is it going to last? What is the duration is a key question. Now, when I asked ChatGPT and Claude what the second question should be, they asked, they told us about Iran's nuclear capabilities. This is not in scope for what we're discussing today. So instead, we're going to ask the question, will this be contained to the region or will this spread further and affect the rest of the globe? We don't really know the answers to these questions, but what we can do is take our ignorance, spread it out, include what we do know, and start to anticipate how we'll react in certain situations. So on the question of how long this will last, well, like I said, we don't know, but there are certain milestones that we can look at to try and anticipate some timing on this. So first of all, the current wisdom is that this will last 4 to 5 weeks. News reports from today are talking about 3 weeks now, because we're 2 weeks into this. And no clear backstop as to how long this will go on for. So knowing what we do know is that in 8 months' time, in November, there is a possibility of the US Congress and Senate changing and this not supporting the conflict in Iran any further. Alternatively, this could go as long as 3 years to January 2029 with the next presidential election in the US. But this could be anything in between, or perhaps even longer, like the Afghanistan situation, which has lasted decades. Now, we have the duration. Let's ask the other question. Will this be contained to the region? Will this spread out of the region? And what is the global impact of this through 4 lenses? And those lenses, again, being energy, food, trade, and macroeconomics. And if we put this into our scenario builder, this is where we can start to really understand the situation. And starting off with food, we can see that food service dynamics in the Middle East are going to change quite a bit with travel restricted and with consumers not wanting to eat out as much. There's also a residual anti-US chain sentiment in the Middle East, and we've seen this in the past towards McDonald's and towards Starbucks. But there's a bigger issue hiding away in the shadows over here. In a region where 85 to 90% of all the food is imported, this could lead to a serious food security issue in the future. Currently, we also see in India, where there's a shortage of liquid natural gas, LNG, this has meant that some restaurants are really starting to close or look for alternative supply for their ingredients. We also see domestic capacity expansions, and specifically in frozen potato in Saudi Arabia that will be impacted by this. And then shifting to the bigger issues, which is energy. And oil and energy prices have already spiked and faster than what we saw in 2022 with the Russian-Ukraine invasion. Now, the International Energy Association has put 400 million barrels of oil, but this is not a permanent solution. This is something that perhaps gets us to about 100 or 150 days, and will certainly not be there past the summer. Now, if oil prices continue to rise, what this can do is reignite the Russian economy and specifically fund further invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Now, this is not the only impact, because through the Straits of Hormuz, we see 1/3 of global fertilizer moving through that strait. And this is going to have a massive impact on crop prices in other regions, leading to inflation and further fueling a cost of living crisis that we've seen for the last 2 or 3 years. Now, there's a lot of regional division. We're not sure which countries are on which side. And if this grows wider, then we could see wider geopolitical conflict in future. Now, I'm stopping short of calling this World War III, because you can't put that into a market intelligence report and expect to get good decision or even confident decision making based on that. But be aware that this situation could escalate quite a bit. We also have increased risk, and this is going to have an impact on insurance and also on borrowing costs, further fueling inflation as well. But if this situation continues, we could see a wider economic crisis. And the same notes apply to the wider geopolitical conflict. It's there. You can't plan for that today, but let's be aware that this is a possible future that we could be looking at. Now, one of the key points that we're going to be looking at is Suez Canal, and as one of the choke points into the Middle East. Currently, this is open, but there have been quite a few closures in recent years, as well as the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which is at the bottom of the Gulf, situated right next to Ethiopia and Somalia. This could cause concern in the future. And in the meantime, we have seen several shipping companies give a reroute notice to go around the Cape of Good Hope. Now, this is a temporary solution because ultimately this adds a lot of cost and a lot of time in transit times. We're also seeing an equipment imbalance. And with this equipment imbalance, you're seeing containers collecting in areas where those containers are not needed, and container shortages where containers are needed. So disruptions like this can really impact the availability of containers around the world. Now, we've already seen Shell and one or two other companies call force majeure in 2026 based on this situation. This is something to track going forward because this is going to have massive implications on existing contracts uh, that affect supply and pricing, as well as freight prices. And we can see freight prices already on the upswing. Coming back to energy and looking at that November timeline right into European winter, currently European gas reserves are at a very, 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 very low point. And to refill them is going to cost quite a bit at higher energy prices. This is not the only bad news for Europe. The recovery fund that Europe has in place that saw us through COVID and the pandemic is currently being applied to defense budgets. And this removes another backstop or another safety net from the global situation. So the last two things we want to put on this is the US midterm elections with a question mark, because who knows what could happen if martial law is declared. With the same on the US presidential elections, we don't know. Now, if we zoom out and we look at what all of this means, it means that we need to keep an eye on energy prices and specifically electricity and gas, but also oil prices as well. From a food point of view, fertilizer prices are rising, food commodity costs and ingredients will go up, and also food supply and demand is going to be changing as well. On the trade side, getting your latest updates on the shipping, what's happening with your freight rates, what's happening with route changes and container availability are going to be very, very useful to you. On the macro side, let's keep it simple for the time being and just talk about general inflation as CPIH and food inflation across all of your major markets. Now, taking these and putting these into your war room immediately brings critical information in front of you when you need it most to be able to make decisions. And this is what we've done is we've taken all of these and built it into dashboarding that will become part of your A-Insights or Valona platforms where you can see immediately what is happening in the world around you and make confident and better decisions around this. Now, if we go through this industry by industry, what we can see is this has a heavily negative impact on frozen potato, which is very, very sensitive to energy prices, also to food pricing that we'll see go up. Trade is definitely going to be restricted, and potentially demand can come down as well, especially with chains under pressure. From a dairy point of view, we see very, very similar dynamics, with the key difference over here is that there is no dairy coming out of the Middle East, only dairy going into the Middle East, but this will still create challenging situations. Much the same for bakery and for the chemical industry as well, which is very, very energy heavy, very reliant on trade, and the combination of these two factors could have an impact on demand for chemical products as well. Our key call out to you throughout all of this is be prepared, because this is not going to be a sprint. This is a marathon, or at least that's what it looks like today. And you could be faced with consequences of this for many, many, many years to come. So get your data in order, get your strategy in terms of utilizing that data and making decisions that affect your outcome in the long run. Thank you very, very much for your time. Please like and subscribe and watch out for more content on this scenario as it unfolds. Thank you very much.